Women often wonder if there's some secret way of changing situationships into relationships. And there's a ton of videos out there promising ways of getting you out of this situation, but they all have one major problem. Last year, Time magazine put out an article called "Situationships are the future of dating, and that's not a bad thing." Oh, f*** off, Time magazine. Firstly, for those unfamiliar with the term, what is a situationship? So imagine a man and woman start dating and having sex, but they don't put a label on it. They don't introduce each other to friends or family. It just remains in this twilight zone of sex without an official relationship. While the Time magazine article glamorizes it as a mutually satisfying arrangement, in reality, one person, usually the woman, wants commitment, but the other doesn't want to give it, because frankly, he's just fine with how things are. He's getting everything he wants already, so why should he commit? This leads women to ask questions such as, so how can I get a man to commit? But that's completely the wrong question, because, and you may find this difficult to believe, men have no problem with commitment. Men are very committed. We are committed to our work or hobbies. We can sink hundreds of hours into video games which aren't even real life. We can even follow the same sports team from childhood until we die, even when they lose almost every game, even when anyone less committed would have switched allegiances years ago. When men commit, we often commit for life. So he is committed. He's just not committed to you. There may be a multitude of reasons for this. It's been popular for unqualified armchair psychologists to just label people as narcissists or say he's immature or afraid of commitment or whatever else. And yeah, maybe he has some avoidant attachment style that plays a part of this. But another answer, and I think a much bigger part of the puzzle, is something that people would be much more uncomfortable with. Now, before I go any further, I want to say that this video might hold some challenging ideas for some people, and it's certainly not a simple message for simple minds. There's layers to this thing. I'm just putting the information out there, and I'm very happy to discuss that in the comments, but please bear with me as I delve into the background of our instincts and how we get into these situationships in the first place. Men and women have both long-term and short-term mating strategies. Let's take them one by one. The human long-term mating strategy is for a woman to find a man willing to commit to raising children with her, investing his time and energy into the safety and security of her and her children. For this, the man is looking for a woman who is highly attractive, but more importantly, someone who has excellent character traits which can lead to a peaceful and harmonious relationship. For men, the short-term mating strategy is sowing his wild oats, spreading the seed in a way which, during the millennia of human existence before contraception, would mean that lots of children would be born. Not all would survive, but he wouldn't have to stick around to raise them. It would be just a numbers game. The female short-term strategy is around finding the best genes that she can, which is often very different from the best relationship material. It's the strategy expressed in the mentalities of what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, or I was drunk and he was hot and one thing led to another. Unlike many animals which show signs that they are in estrus, that is, releasing an egg at the point of peak fertility, human beings don't show when they ovulate. Which means that if a woman has sex with more than one man, there wasn't a definitive way to tell who the father of the child was. And there's also a long-term secondary component that goes along with that short-term strategy. Trying to find a man to take care of her and her children, who might not have been her first choice, who might not have been as hot as the short-term guy, but is a better bet for a relationship. Finding him either later to become a stepfather, or sometimes using that advantage of the hidden estrus and passing off the children as his.
You are not the father.
But these strategies aren't conscious. They play out whether we know them or not. But in general, women tend to be more focused on the long term, because for millions of years, to have sex at all was to risk pregnancy, which was an extremely risky process before the dawn of modern medicine. And our brains have been shaped by our ancient past so much more than the last 60 years or so of us having reliable birth control. But in recent times, there's been a big push for women to copy the evolved behaviors of men in the name of empowerment and embracing their sexuality. In my time, I've had more than my fair share of encounters with women where I wanted more, but they just saw me as a short-term fling. Sometimes because they already had someone else and I didn't know it till later. There's that short-term strategy again. I do, however, believe that women don't feel deeply fulfilled in life when they are pursuing the most shallow and superficial of male strategies. But anyway, back to situationships. What is happening here, and why the heck did I just spend time going through long and short-term mating strategies? Well, I think the reason that women get into such situationships is often due to confusion over which mating strategy the man is using. She thinks that he thinks like she thinks, and he does not. The woman may be hoping that the man sees her as long-term potential, as someone to commit to, like she's so close and it would be the next natural step, because that's how she would feel in his position. But very often the man sees her as just a short-term option, someone for now, not forever. And sometimes the guy doesn't even know. We've all met women who we didn't like so much at first, but they really grew on us. But that is rare and it shouldn't be relied upon. But men can excuse themselves into thinking that they're just giving it a chance when they know that she isn't really what they want. Women often wonder if there's some secret way of changing situationships into relationships. And there's a ton of videos out there promising ways of getting you out of this situation, but they all have one major problem. They're all full of shit. Am I really telling anyone anything that they didn't already know? They can see right before their eyes that they are giving him everything he wants, and yet not getting what they want. And still it continues. They are often knowingly or unknowingly maybe even sharing that guy with other women who are in situationships with him. He may be enjoying several women without committing to any. How did it get to this? I think again it's a misunderstanding of the things men look for in the short term versus long term. Both men and women want within reason the best possible partner for the long term. But for the short term, we go in different directions. To be a woman's short-term option, the man must be more attractive than the long-term guy to make the risk worth it of her getting pregnant by him without him sticking around. That was a huge risk for our ancestors, and we retain their habits deep in our DNA. But a man pursuing his short-term mating strategy reduces his standards of attractiveness. He would prefer to find the most attractive woman he can, but ultimately, the woman doesn't even have to be his type, or even have a personality that he enjoys being around. He might have chosen her not because he saw her as a potential future wife and mother of his children, but just because he was bored and horny and she was willing and available. And she can be just one of many women he is currently sleeping with. Now remember, most men can't do this. Sleeping around is something that only a minority of men can do. On dating apps, 80% of men are rated by women to be below average attractiveness. The 10% of men who are considered to be the most attractive get 63% of right swipes, whereas the bottom 60% of men get only 4% of right swipes between all of them. Which means that for those who are considered attractive by the majority of women, they never really need to commit to get their immediate needs and gratification fulfilled. And I've seen how some very attractive men use Tinder, the tall, handsome guys with great physiques who look like models. And it's like ordering pizza. 1/3 of men have no women. Most men have one woman, but the most attractive men often have many women. At any one time, there are enough women willing to have sex with them that they never need to commit to any of them. Women's sexual liberation primarily benefited not women, not men, but a very small section of very attractive men. Because for those men, it's a great time to be alive. Meanwhile, women feel used, and a large proportion of men struggle to even find one woman to be interested in them. It's a very skewed market. But many women convince themselves that they have a chance of a relationship with a very attractive man, giving up their opportunities with men who are on their level in terms of attractiveness, either explicitly or just through making themselves not available, in order to try to be with a man who only offers them a situationship.
I am a certified relationship coach. These women come to me wondering why they aren't getting the dating outcomes that they want. And a lot of times it starts with them not being objective about their mate value, physical appearance, what they bring to the table, what they have to offer, who they are. And you have to remind them that these are the things that you woke up every day and told yourself in the mirror, daily affirmations. I'm a 10, I'm this, I'm going to manifest this, I'm going to attract the energy that I put out. All of that is bullshit. You live in a world to where someone has to pick you too. It's just not about what you believe about yourself. It's about the way the world sees you as well. And if you have the expectations of as a woman, I want to attract this type of guy, I think I'm on the level of this type of guy, and the reality is you're not, you're really going to end up heartbroken. And that's what I have to explain to them once they get there. So you ladies are young, you don't understand it, you don't see it. But if you continue to hold a certain attitude about yourself that is not aligned with reality, reality is going to show you what the fuck is up. And you're going to be so much more heartbroken and wish that you had just been more realistic and maybe took advantage of some of the opportunities that were presented to you in terms of dating, in terms of relationships with guys who could have been good partners, but because you felt that you were above him when you really weren't, by whatever metric you choose to use, now you're single. You're stuck. You're single. And you can't get what you want because you spent all your years that you should have been investing in those guys who are on your level, trying to get something better that you weren't really qualified for.
But whether it's a highly attractive man sleeping with lots of women, or just a man without so many apparent options who won't commit, there's also the dynamic that many women find attractive, thinking that if he won't commit, then he must be better than me. So I should feel really lucky that he's even given me this much. And then they keep chasing and chasing what they can't have. And it's incredibly common. Neil Strauss, in the book about pickup artists called The Game, talked about how giving attention to women is like dangling a string in front of a cat. The cat will play with the string as long as it doesn't get to have it completely, but if you drop the string, the cat will just stare at it lying on the floor, get bored, and walk away. Most people, and therefore most women, have unresolved issues which people can learn to exploit. Not a small number of women's sense of self-worth and unresolved trauma is such that they can only fall in love with men who aren't fully available to them. But if they ever got that love that they're chasing, they'd end up not wanting it, and they'd just go on to repeat the same cycle with someone new. The unhealed unconscious mind is always trying to repeat the events of the past, hoping for a different outcome, but never getting it. I don't think it's reasonable for a woman to expect a situationship to turn into something else simply from the power of hope over reality. If you don't have the boundaries to say, I don't think I'm getting out of this what I want, so let's end this, and to really mean it, and to really stick by it, then you're just going to keep the cycle repeating. And if you don't learn to distinguish between a man for whom you're just a convenient sexual outlet and a man who wants to commit to you, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And here's another painful truth that some men and most women in the modern world will have to face. You may never be able to get into a relationship with the most instantly attractive person that you've ever had sex with. You probably won't settle down with the hottest person you've ever been able to hook up with. But it's stupid to base the rest of your life on superficial traits that don't really matter after the beginning of a relationship. Relationship satisfaction isn't enhanced by those things. Your relationship equal match isn't someone willing to have just sex with you. Like I said earlier, men will sleep with anything when they're bored and horny, but the person who is willing to commit to you and love you. Women can get sex from vastly more attractive men than they can get relationships from. Looking for someone who is attractive enough, who loves and treats you well, is much more realistic than expecting to find someone super attractive but not committed, who suddenly decides that they want a long-term thing with you and only you. You have to zoom out a bit and look at the long term, not just the immediate feelings of hotness or status that they can give you. Getting stuck on the highest setting of superficial traits that you've experienced, the chasing scraps from someone who is hot but unavailable, is often tied up with a crisis of self-worth. Some women feel insulted at the idea that they cannot get the most attractive man to commit to them, but they're confusing their own value as a human being with their sexual attractiveness or relationship attractiveness. They are completely different things. For example, someone who dedicates their life to helping people may be a great person, but if they're not aesthetically pleasing, no one's going to be chasing after them for dates. Meanwhile, someone who might not be such a great person but is great to look at might get a lot of interest, at least initially, and probably chronically from those with low self-worth. Changing your perspective on this might be really hard work at first, because changing your focus is like breaking an addiction by going cold turkey. It comes with all the discomfort, unfamiliarity, and changes that go with that. But it's a choice of either 1. Discomfort now, giving yourself what you need even when it's uncomfortable and it's difficult to get used to. Or 2, discomfort later by chasing what you thought you wanted, but never really getting it. Or you can just keep doing what you're doing. It's your life. If you made it to this point, please let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. I hope it's at least helpful to some people. You're welcome.